Do you ever look at a genius and think, man, what is going on in that brain? Like Einstein scribbles some equation on a napkin and time itself bends? Or Elon Musk wakes up and decides, yeah, I'll build a flamethrower, colonize Mars, and run Twitter into the ground. Meanwhile, you forget your keys while holding them. We tend to look at intelligence like it is horsepower in a car. We think if we just get a bigger engine, or read more books, or memorize more facts, we will win. The thing is, being smart isn't about having more brain. But first, let's take a trip back to the days of British rule in India. The colonial government had a problem. Specifically, they had a very long, venomous problem slithering around Delhi called the cobra. The British are polite people, and they generally prefer their cities not to be infested with death noodles. So they came up with a plan that sounded incredibly smart on paper. They offered a cash bounty for every dead cobra. The logic was flawless. If you pay people to kill snakes, then people will kill snakes, and eventually there will be zero snakes. It is simple economics. It is a straight line from A to B. So the locals started killing snakes. The pile of dead cobras got huge. The British bureaucrats patted themselves on the back and sipped their tea. But then something weird happened. The number of dead cobras kept coming in, but the number of live cobras in the streets didn't go down. Why? Because the locals were not idiots. They realized that a dead cobra was worth money. So they started breeding them in their backyards. They created cobra farms. The British government was unknowingly subsidizing the manufacturing of the very thing they were trying to destroy. When the government finally figured out they were being scammed, they cancelled the bounty program. So what did the breeders do? Well, the snakes were worthless now, so they just opened the cages and released them. The net result of this smart policy was that the snake population in Delhi actually tripled. This is called the Cobra Effect, and it is the perfect introduction to why most of what you think is intelligence, it's actually not. The British officials were smart. They had high IQs. They went to Oxford. They wore wigs. And yet they managed to engineer a plague of snakes because they didn't know how to think. Here's the real kicker. Smart people do stupid shit all the time. Not because they're dumb, but because intelligence isn't just IQ, but rationality, your ability to avoid self-sabotage, see second-order effects, not fall for your own damn tricks. That's your steering wheel and your brakes. Chapter 2. Inversion. Here's a radical idea. Stop trying to be right. Start trying to not be wrong. Sounds backwards? Good. That's the point. The core idea is simple. It is infinitely easier to avoid being wrong than it is to be right. Let's look at World War II. The US military is sending bombers over Germany and getting absolutely shredded. The planes that manage to limp back home are covered in bullet holes. The military brass looks at these planes and they see a pattern. The wings and the fuselage look like Swiss cheese, but the cockpit and the engines are mostly untouched. So the generals, being smart, guys with stars on their shoulders, say, we need to put more armor on the wings and the fuselage because that is where the bullets are hitting. Enter Abraham Wald. He was a mathematician who looked at these generals and basically said, you are all idiots. He told them to put the armor where the bullet holes weren't. Why? Because he realized they were only looking at the survivors. The planes with holes in the wings came back. The planes with holes in the engines, they were at the bottom of the ocean. They didn't come back to be part of the dataset. This is survivorship bias. The generals were trying to fix the non-fatal problems because the fatal problems were invisible to them. This is what inversion does. It forces you to look for the invisible data. It forces you to look for the bullet holes that kill you. Charlie Munger, the business partner of Warren Buffett and a man who looked like a tortoise that learned to trade stocks, had a famous line about this. He said, all I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there. It sounds like a joke, but it is profound. If you want to have a good life, don't ask, how do I become happy? That is too vague. Ask, how do I make myself miserable? How do you make yourself miserable. Easy. Get addicted to drugs. Go to jail. Be unreliable. Cheat on your spouse. Destroy your health. Now write that list down and don't do those things. If you just avoid the stupidity, the success tends to take care of itself. Because here's a brutal truth. In a multiplication chain, 1, 0 wipes out everything. You can be 99% brilliant, world-class diet, elite workout routine, masterful time management. But if you smoke 2 packs a day, that 0 in the health column drags your entire life expectancy to the gutter. You can write the most elegant code in the world, but if you deploy it without testing, one null pointer exception can crash your non-existing billion-dollar app. Being smart isn't about stacking wins. It's about avoiding catastrophic losses. And that starts by identifying your zeros before they happen. Most people spend their lives trying to add another 5 to their talent score when they have a giant blinking 0 in their reliability score. Stop trying to be brilliant. Brilliance is hard. Brilliance is rare. Just stop being stupid. Avoiding stupidity is reliable. If you want to win the game, just look at the board, invert the problem, and make sure you aren't putting armor on the wings while your engine is exposed. Chapter 3. The map is not the territory. There is a painting by a Belgian surrealist named René Magritte that shows a very realistic image of a smoking pipe. And underneath the pipe, in fancy cursive script, it says, "Ceci n'est pas une pipe," which is French for, "This is not a pipe." Now, if you are a literal thinker, you look at that and say, "What a pretentious liar." Of course it's a pipe. It's right there. But if you actually try to stuff tobacco into that painting and light it on fire, you are going to realize very quickly that Magritte was right. It's not a pipe. It's a representation of a pipe. It is canvas and oil paint. You cannot smoke a painting. This brings us to one of the most dangerous cognitive traps in existence, confusing the model for the reality. We call this, the map is not the territory. Let's look at the London Underground. If you have ever been to London, you have used Harry Beck's famous tube map. It is a masterpiece of design. It has clean, straight lines, perfect 45-degree angles, and evenly spaced stations. It tells you exactly how to get from Waterloo to Camden Town. But here is the thing, the tube map is a lie. Geographically, it is absolute nonsense. If you overlay the tube map onto a real satellite map of London, nothing lines up. The real tunnels twist and turn like spaghetti. The distances are all wrong, but that is okay. In fact, that is the point. If the map showed the messy, chaotic reality of the tunnels, it would be useless. You wouldn't be able to read it. The map is useful because it ignores 90% of the truth. It simplifies reality so you can actually function. The problem starts when you forget that the map is a simplification and start treating it like it is the reality. We do this constantly. Take your GPA in school. Your grades are a map. They are a simplified model that is supposed to represent your intelligence and work ethic. But we all know that one guy who had a 4.0 GPA who couldn't figure out how to operate a revolving door. This happens everywhere. GDP isn't a nation's well-being. It's a map of economic output, but we treat it like so, ignoring pollution, inequality, or whether people are actually happy. Grades aren't knowledge. They're a map of compliance, memory, and test-taking skill. Yet, we gatekeep careers, scholarships, and self-worth based on them. The smart move? Hold your maps loosely. Use them to navigate, but never stop glancing up at the real world. Because the moment you confuse your spreadsheet for the business, your opinion for the truth, or your horoscope for destiny, you stop being smart. You've just become a very confident tourist, lost in your own head. Chapter 4. First Principles. Thinking. Most people go through life like a cook in a fast food franchise. You come in, you look at the manual, and you follow the recipe. Step 1. Defrost patty. Step 2. Apply heat. Step 3. Serve. You don't need to know why the grill works. You don't need to know the chemical composition of the beef. You just follow the instructions. This is reasoning by analogy. You do it because it's how it's always been done. But then there are the chefs. I don't mean the guy flipping burgers. I mean the guy inventing the burger. The chef doesn't look at the recipe. The chef looks at the raw ingredients and the laws of chemistry. This is first principles thinking. It is the act of stripping a problem down to its fundamental, undeniable truths and then building up from there, completely ignoring how everyone else does it. Let's look at Elon Musk. Love him or hate him, the guy is a monster at this. When he wanted to go to Mars, he looked at the price of rockets. The Russians and the Americans were charging, say, 60 million for a launch. Everyone told him, that's just what rockets cost. Space is expensive. Don't bother. That is reasoning by analogy. That is looking at the menu. Musk didn't accept the menu. He looked at the ingredients. He broke a rocket down to its first principles. What is a rocket made of? Aerospace grade. Aluminum, titanium, copper, carbon fiber. Then he went to the London Metal Exchange and checked the price of those raw materials. It turned out the cost of the materials was only about 2% of the price of the rocket. The other 98% was people being inefficient, bureaucratic bloat, and terrible manufacturing processes. So he said, screw the recipe. I'll buy the metal and build it myself. And he cut the cost of space travel by a factor of 10. This is the difference between a cook and a chef, and that's the power here. Reasoning by analogy says, Uber is like a taxi company, but with an app. First principle says, people need point-to-point transportation. Cars sit idle 95% of the time. Smartphones exist. What's the simplest system that connects unused capacity with demand? Boom. Rideshare. So next time you're stuck, don't ask, how's this been done before? Ask, what are the irreducible elements of this problem? What do I know to be undeniably true? What assumptions am I accepting just because? That's how it's always been. Because once you stop building on top of other people's conclusions and start building on your foundation, you stop optimizing the horse carriage. Chapter 5. Circle of Competence. Let's talk about Michael Jordan, not the GOAT. I mean the Michael Jordan who struck out more times than he got on base in minor league baseball. After winning 6 NBA titles, MJ decided to pivot to baseball. Why not? Fresh off retirement, and apparently convinced that world-class athletic coordination translates directly across sports. He signed with the Chicago White Sox organization in 1994. He batted .222. In baseball, that's not learning curve. That's please stop endangering the other players. Now, was Jordan stupid for trying? No. He's one of the most disciplined, focused humans to ever exist. But he stepped outside his circle of competence. Inside the circle, he is a genius. Outside the circle, he is just a guy named Mike who can't hit a curveball. The problem isn't that you are stupid. The problem is that you don't know where the edge of your circle is. You think the circle is the whole world. It isn't. Tom Watson, the founder of IBM, had this figured out perfectly. He said, I am no genius. I am smart in spots, and I stay around those spots. That is the definition of practical intelligence. It is knowing exactly what you don't know. There is a concept called chauffeur knowledge. It comes from a story about Max Planck, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist. He went around giving the same lecture on quantum mechanics all over Germany. His chauffeur drove him to every gig and sat in the back row. One day, the chauffeur says, Professor, I've heard this speech so many times, I could give it myself. Planck says, okay, you go up there and I'll wear the chauffeur cap. So the chauffeur gets up and gives the lecture perfectly. He mimics the words, the pauses, the gestures. Then, a physicist in the audience asks a really hard, specific question. The chauffeur doesn't panic. He says, I'm surprised to hear such a simple question in a city as advanced as Munich. I'll let my chauffeur answer it. The chauffeur had the vocabulary, but he didn't have the understanding. He was mimicking competence. We live in a world full of chauffeurs, people who watch a 3-minute YouTube video on crypto or epidemiology and think they can debate experts. Imagine your life is a map covered in the fog of war, like a video game. There is a tiny circle of light where you can see everything clearly. That is your circle of competence. Everywhere else is dark. If you fight in the light, you win. Ask yourself, where do I have actual experience, not just opinions? Where have I been tested under pressure and succeeded? Where do I consistently outperform others because I see what they miss? Then stay there. Or expand slowly, deliberately, with humility. Smart people don't try to light up the whole map. They just refuse to fight in the dark, because outside your circle, you're not just ignorant, you're predictably wrong. And the world will charge you for that error in embarrassment, money, or time. So be like Buffett. Be like Watson. Be like Jordan. Master your patch of ground. The rest of the world can wait. Chapter 6. Hanlon's Razor. Let's talk about why you are angry all the time. You're driving along, minding your own business, when some lunatic swerves into your lane, cuts you off by a hair's breadth, and vanishes into the distance. Your brain instantly generates a full cinematic backstory. This guy is probably the dumbest person alive, listens to death metal while microwaving fish, and probably kicks puppies for sport. But here's a better explanation. He didn't see you. Welcome to Hanlon's Razor. Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. It's not as famous as Occam's razor, but it's way more useful in daily life. Because assuming the worst about people doesn't make you perceptive. It makes you exhausted and wrong. Take the Library of Alexandria. For centuries, we blamed the Christians or the Muslims or the Romans for its destruction, this grand, coordinated act of anti-intellectual arson. But modern historians now think it probably wasn't one dramatic fire. It was decades, maybe centuries, of slow decay, budget cuts, political neglect, bureaucratic indifference, and the occasional riot where books were just. No villain cackling over burning scrolls, just entropy. And that's way more terrifying and way more common. When you assume malice, you become paranoid. You assume the world is out to get you. When you assume stupidity, the world makes much more sense and you can actually relax. Hanlon's Razor is emotional judo. It lets you sidestep the drama and ask, what's the least evil explanation that still fits the facts? Because 9 times out of 10, the world isn't out to get you. It's just profoundly, hilariously, tragically clumsy. And that's way easier to deal with. Chapter 7. Via Negativa. Subtraction as the path to genius. You know that statue of David? The one that's basically the Renaissance version of a Marvel superhero. Perfect abs, flowing hair, eyeballs carved with the intensity of a man who just remembered he left the oven on. Michelangelo didn't build that. He freed it. His famous quote, "I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free." Not adding muscle, not sculpting features, but chipping away everything that isn't David. Most people try to get smarter by jamming more in, more courses, more apps, more neurohacks, more fucking nootropics that turn your pee neon green. But real intelligence isn't a bloated buffet. It's a minimalist kitchen where every tool has a purpose. Nowhere is this clearer than in medicine. Mid-1800s, Vienna General Hospital. Women are dying left and right after childbirth. Mortality rates as high as 30%. Doctors are baffled. They blame bad air, cosmic imbalances, women's hysterical constitutions, the usual Victorian nonsense. Then enters Ignaz Semmelweis, a Hungarian physician with the social grace of a caffeinated badger. He notices something weird. The maternity ward staffed by doctors has way higher death rates than the one run by midwives. Why? Turns out the doctors were doing autopsies in the morning, then delivering babies in the afternoon, without washing their hands. They weren't evil. They just didn't know about germs. Germ theory didn't exist yet. To them, invisible death particles on your fingers sounded like witchcraft. So Semmelweis made a radical demand. Wash your hands with chlorinated lime. Result? Mortality dropped to under 1%. He didn't invent a vaccine. He didn't discover a new drug. He just removed a source of contamination. That's via negativa. Stop poisoning the system, and it heals itself. But here's the kicker. Semmelweis was ridiculed, fired, and eventually committed to an asylum where he died after being beaten by guards. Not because his idea was wrong, but because it removed a layer of professional pride. Doctors had to admit they'd been killing patients with their bare hands. And ego doesn't like subtraction. We're still doing this today. You buy a fancy productivity app instead of deleting social media. You take caffeine pills instead of fixing your sleep schedule. You read 3 books on communication instead of just stopping interrupting people. Your brain isn't slow, it's clogged. Your life isn't chaotic, it's over-designed. Steve Jobs didn't make the iPhone smart by adding more buttons. He made it revolutionary by removing the keyboard. Dieter Rams didn't design better radios. He designed ones with fewer knobs. Bruce Lee didn't become a martial arts legend by learning every style, he said. I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. So ask yourself, what can I stop doing that would improve my life more than any new habit? What's the one toxic input I'm tolerating? Gossip, doom scrolling, that one friend who leaves you emotionally drained. What clutter in my environment, schedule, or mind is pretending to be useful? Because genius isn't about building a better you. It's about chiseling away the bullshit until only the essential remains. And that's easy. You just have to swing the hammer. Chapter 8, Second Order Thinking. Chesterton's fence. Imagine you're walking down a country road and you see a fence across someone's field. It's crooked, weather-beaten. No gate, no sign, just a fence. Your first thought? What's the point of this thing? It's in the way. I'll just tear it down. But before you grab that crowbar, let's talk to G.K. Chesterton, the mustachioed, cigar-chomping philosopher who said, "Don't ever take a fence down until you know the reason it was put up." But what happens after that? And after that? Because systems are sneaky. They look dumb until you trace the chain reaction. Take Mao Zedong's Four Pests campaign in 1958. Sparrows were eating grain, so Mao declared war on them. Citizens were ordered to bang pots, shout, and shoot the birds out of the sky. They killed millions of sparrows. Mission accomplished. Except sparrows also ate locusts. Within a year, locust populations exploded. Crops vanished, and the Great Chinese Famine began, killing an estimated 30 to 45 million people. Mao didn't lack intelligence. He just thought one step ahead, fewer sparrows, more grain. He saw a fence and tore it down without asking why it was there. Now flick to the opposite story. In 1995, after a 70-year absence, wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone National Park. Environmentalists were hopeful. Ranchers were furious. Predators? In our park? But something wild happened, literally. The wolves hunted elk. Fewer elk meant less overgrazing. Willows and aspens regrew along riverbanks. Beavers returned, building dams that slowed water flow. Riverbanks stabilized. Channels narrowed. Pools deepened. Songbirds, fish, otters, and bears all came back. Even the rivers changed course. That's trophic cascade, a second order and third and fourth effect so profound it reshaped the land. The fence wasn't just a predator policy. It was a keystone holding the whole territory together. This is why smart people pause before fixing things. Your company bans all meetings to save time. But now no one coordinates. Projects collide. Chaos erupts. You delete all your social media to focus. But you lose your main client pipeline. Revenue plummets. You skip breakfast to intermittent fast. But your blood sugar crashes by 10 a.m. and you eat an entire rotisserie chicken in the parking lot. Second order thinking is simply, and then what? Ask it like a toddler, relentlessly. I'll launch this product. And then what? People will buy it. And then what? They'll expect support. And then what? We'll need a team. And then what? They'll burn out if we don't scale properly. Boom. Now you're designing sustainability, not just a launch. Chesterton's fence isn't about preserving tradition for its own sake. It's about respect for complexity. The world is a Rube Goldberg machine of unintended consequences. Pull one string, and a piano might fall on your head 3 systems away. So before you optimize, ask, who built this? What problem were they solving? What invisible structure depends on this dumb rule? Because the easy part of being smart isn't having brilliant ideas. It's resisting the urge to break things you don't understand. Chapter 9. The OODA Loop. Outpace, don't outthink. You ever watch 2 kids fight over a toy? One grabs it. The other panics, screams, runs in circles, then finally tackles the first kid, and by then, the grown-up has already stepped in and taken the toy away from both of them. Meanwhile, the smart kid, he saw the first kid reach for the toy, realized he was too slow, and immediately said, "You know what? I actually wanted the other toy, the one nobody's fighting over." 0 conflict, maximum efficiency. That's not just playground strategy. That's the OODA Loop, and it's how you win any competitive game, from dogfights to startups to dating apps. OOD stands for Observe, Orient, Decide. It was developed by Colonel John Boyd, a U.S. Air Force pilot so legendary they called him 42nd Boyd, because in mock dogfights, he could get on your tail and shoot you down in under 40 seconds. His secret wasn't faster planes or better eyesight. It was a faster decision cycle. While his opponent was still processing what just happened. Wait, did he just flip upside down? Boyd had already cycled through OODA twice and was lining up the kill shot. He realized speed of iteration beats perfection of plan. Because here's the dirty secret of real-world conflict. It's not chess. It's Tetris. The pieces keep falling. If you take too long to decide where to place one block, the whole stack collapses. Amazon gets this. Jeff Bezos talks about 2-way door decisions. If a decision is reversible, if walking through the door doesn't lock it behind you, then don't analyze it to death. Just pick a direction and go. You'll learn more from acting than from theorizing. But most people, they're stuck in OOD, observe, orient, decide, and then freeze. They wait for more data, perfect clarity, or the right time. Meanwhile, the world moves on without them. You see it everywhere. You spend 6 months researching the best laptop while your side hustle gathers dust. You rehearse the perfect text to your crush and send it 3 weeks later, only to find out they're dating someone else. Your company holds 14 meetings to align on vision, while a scrappy competitor launches, fails, learns, and pivots, all before your first PowerPoint deck is approved. The OODA Loop isn't about being right. It's about being first to adapt. Because once you act, you change the game. You force your opponent to react to your reality, not the other way around. And if your loop is faster than theirs, you get inside their head. They're always playing last season's playbook, while you're already rewriting the rules. So here's your move. Stop waiting to fully understand. Start closing the loop. Observe, C, orient. Decide, ECT. ACT, even if you're wrong, you'll gather real-time feedback that's worth 100x more than your internal monologue. And you'll be cycling through version 3 while your competition is still stuck on the loading screen of version 1. In the game of being smart, speed isn't just an advantage. It's the entire strategy. Chapter 10. Occam's Razor. All right. Meet clever Hans. Early 1900s. Berlin. This horse, becomes an international sensation because he can do math. His owner asks, "What's 7 plus 5?" And Hans taps his hoof 12 times. Crowd goes wild. Scientists are baffled. Is this proof of animal intelligence? A miracle? A hoax? Turns out, none of the above. A psychologist named Oscar Funkst investigated and discovered the truth. Hans wasn't doing math. He was reading body language. As soon as the owner or any questioner saw Hans hit the correct number, they'd relax. A tiny shift in posture, a micro-release of tension. Hans, incredibly observant, would stop tapping right then. No supernatural powers, no equine algebra. Just a horse who'd learned to read human faces better than most dating app users read bios. This is Occam's razor in action. Among competing hypotheses, the one with the fewest assumptions should be selected. Or, more casually, the simplest explanation that fits the facts is usually the right one. Your brain loves drama. It wants conspiracies, hidden meanings, secret cabals. But reality? Reality is lazy. It prefers the path of least resistance. Take medicine. A patient walks in with a cough, fever, and fatigue. The med student thinks, could be valley fever or histoplasmosis, or maybe a rare autoimmune disorder triggered by lunar cycles. The seasoned doctor says, it's the flu. Hence the old medical adage, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. It's about efficiency. Every extra assumption is a point of failure. The more moving parts your theory has, the more ways it can collapse. Now look at conspiracy theories. Flat Earth? NASA's lying. Every airline pilot is in on it. Photos are faked. Gravity is a hoax. And millions of scientists across centuries are all part of a silent pact. Versus the Earth is a sphere. One assumption versus a Rube Goldberg machine of global deception. Which is more likely? Occam's razor isn't a law of truth. It's a tool for pruning. It doesn't prove the simple answer is correct, but it forces you to earn the complexity. If your simple explanation doesn't fit the evidence, then you escalate. But most of the time, the cough is just a cough. The text that says, we need to talk, isn't a breakup. It's your friend asking if you want leftover pizza. The software bug isn't a state-level cyber attack, it's a missing semicolon. And the horse? He wasn't a genius. He was just paying attention. So next time you're constructing a narrative about your boss, your relationship, a news headline, ask, what's the version of this that requires the fewest lies, coincidences, or secret meetings in underground bunkers? Because the universe isn't out to trick you. It's just indifferent. And indifference is boringly simple. Chapter 11, Probabilistic Thinking. Let's talk about poker. Not the bluff with sunglasses indoors, Hollywood version. Real poker. The kind where you win, even when you lose the hand. Enter Annie Duke, former World Series of Poker champion and cognitive scientist. She once made a statistically perfect call in a high-stakes game. Folded when the odds were against her, even though the actual outcome would have been a win. Later, someone said, "Man, you got unlucky." She laughed. "No, I played it right. The result was just noise." That's probabilistic thinking, divorcing process from outcome. Most people treat the world in binaries, success, failure, right or wrong, win, lose. But reality isn't Boolean. It's analog. It runs on percentages. Weather forecasts know this. When your app says 30% chance of rain, it doesn't mean it'll rain in 30% of your hair. It means on 100 days with identical atmospheric conditions, it rained on 30 of them. That's not a failure, to be precise. It's honesty about uncertainty. But your brain? Your brain hates uncertainty. It craves closure. So it retrofits randomness into narrative. I failed because I'm cursed, or I succeeded because I'm a genius. You just rolled the dice. This is why smart people think in bets. They don't say, this will work. They say, I'm 70% confident this will work. And here's what would make me change my mind. This is Bayesian updating, starting with a prior belief, e.g., most startups fail. Then adjusting your competence as new data arrives, e.g., but this team has shipped 3 products on time. Imagine you're a doctor. A patient tests positive for a rare disease that affects 1 in 1,000 people. The test is 99% accurate. What's the chance they actually have it? Most people say 99%. The real answer? About 9%. Why? Because out of 1,000 people, 1 has the disease and tests positive. But of the 999 healthy people, 10 will get a false positive, 1% error rate. So you've got 11 positive results, and only 1 is true. That's base rate neglect, ignoring the underlying probability. Probabilistic thinking forces you to weigh the odds, not just the story. In business, don't ask, will this product succeed? Ask, what's the probability it gains traction, and what early signals would confirm or kill that hypothesis? Ask what's more likely, malice, or that they're overwhelmed at work. See, in investing, don't bet everything on one stock because it feels right. And crucially, celebrate good decisions even when they backfire. Because if you punish yourself for bad results, you'll start avoiding smart risks. You'll only do things guaranteed to work, which, in a changing world, means you do nothing. So rewire your language. Replace, I was wrong. My probability estimate was off. This failed. The outcome fell in the 30% tail. I knew it! My model was well calibrated, because being smart isn't about predicting the future. It's about not being surprised when it unfolds differently than you hoped. Chapter 12. The Steel Man Argument. Picture this. You're in a debate. Maybe online, maybe at Thanksgiving, maybe in your head at 3 a.m. You got your opinion, say, universal basic income is a disaster waiting to happen, and you're about to unleash your 17-point takedown. But before you do, pause. Ask yourself, can I explain the strongest, smartest, most morally compelling version of the opposite argument better than the person who actually believes it? You don't have an opinion. You have a meme. This is the steel man argument, the opposite of the straw man. Instead of distorting your opponent's view into something flimsy and dumb. So, you want to pay lazy people to sit on their couches all day? You build it out of steel. Then, and only then, do you try to knock it down. John Stuart Mill put it best. He who knows only his own side of the case knows little of that. Because if you can't articulate why a smart, well-intentioned person might support UBI, say to decouple survival from wage labor in an age of automation, or to reduce bureaucratic overhead compared to means-tested welfare, then you're not arguing. You're just venting. And venting doesn't make you smart. It makes you loud. Now look at the Israeli military. After the 1973 Yom Kippur War, a near-catastrophic intelligence failure, they institutionalized dissent. They created the 10th man rule. If 9 intelligence officers agree on an assessment, the 10th is required to challenge it, no matter how sure they seem. Not to be contrarian, to stress, test reality. This isn't about being open-minded. It's about avoiding collective stupidity, because groups, companies, governments, friend circles have a terrifying tendency to converge on a single narrative and treat disagreement as treason. You see it in startups that ignore customer complaints because they just don't get our vision. In newsrooms that only hire people who voted the same way. In relationships where one partner says, "You never listen," and the other hears, "You're a bad person," instead of, "I feel unheard when you interrupt me." It turns conflict into collaboration. Because when you truly understand the other side, 2 things happen. You might change your mind. Intelligence isn't about being right. It's about updating when the evidence shifts. If you don't change your mind, your position becomes bulletproof, because you've already wrestled with the best counter-arguments and survived. Try it next time. Instead of mocking anti-vaxxers, ask, what real harm are they reacting to? Hint, it's not just Big Pharma, It's broken trust in institutions after decades of medical racism and profit-driven care. Instead of calling crypto bros delusional, ask, what legitimate fear of centralized banking are they trying to solve? You don't have to agree, but you do have to understand, because the smartest people in the room aren't the ones shouting loudest. They're the ones who can whisper your opponent's best argument back to them and make them say, yeah, that's exactly it. And that's how you build truth, not burn it. Chapter 13, Framing Effects and Anchor Points. Let me tell you about a 400 bread maker. Not because I'm trying to sell you one, unless you're into baking artisanal sourdough while mourning your bank account, but because it never sold a single unit. And yet, it made Williams-Sonoma millions. Here's how. The company launched a fancy bread maker for $275. Sales were meh. People couldn't justify spending that much on a machine that just, you can buy a loaf for $3, you heathen? Then, the marketing genius had a stroke of framing brilliance. They introduced a second model for $400. Suddenly, the $275 machine didn't look expensive. It looked like a deal. I could get the gold-plated one, the customer thought, but why not save $125 and still have fresh bread? Sales of the 275 model doubled overnight. That's the anchoring effect. The first number you see warps your entire perception of value. It's not logic, it's cognitive hijacking. Now think about Tom Sawyer. You remember that scene? He's been sentenced to whitewash a fence, 8 feet high, 30 yards long, and he turns it into the hottest ticket in town. How? He frames it as a privilege. He pretends painting is so fun, so exclusive, that other kids beg to do it. He trades an apple, a kite, a dead rat on a string, just for the honor of slapping on some lime wash. He didn't change the task. He changed the story around it. And your brain falls for this constantly. You see a shirt, originally $199, now $69, and feel like a genius, even though it was never $199. You choose the premium subscription because the basic one looks pathetic next to it, even if you don't need the extra features. You rate your pain as 7/10 at the doctor's office because the nurse just asked, is it bearable or excruciating? And you picked the middle. This isn't just about marketing. It's about how reality is constructed in your mind. Take optical illusions. In the checker shadow illusion, two squares, A and B, are identical shades of gray. But because one is in shadow and surrounded by light tiles, your brain screams, no, they're different. That's framing. And it works on beliefs, not just prices. If I say, this policy will kill 100 people, you recoil. If I say, this policy will save 900 out of 1,000, same math. Opposite emotional response. Politicians know this. Lawyers know this. Scammers know this. So, how do you fight back? First, spot the frame. Ask, what's being emphasized? What's being hidden? What alternative perspectives exist? Second, reframe deliberately. Stuck on a project? Don't ask, why is this so hard? Ask, what part of this is actually fun? Don't anchor to your current pay. Anchor to market rates for your value. Feeling overwhelmed? Don't ask, how will I finish everything? Ask, what's the one thing that makes the rest easier? Because being smart isn't about seeing the world as it is. It's about choosing the frame that helps you act without being played. And if all else fails, just sell a 400 bread maker. Watch the peasants line up for the discount. Chapter 14, The Lindy Effect. Not your death, not mine, the death of ideas. In 1960, a mathematician named Benoit Mandelbrot noticed something weird about the lifespan of Broadway shows. The longer a show had already been running, the longer its expected future run became. A musical that had survived 6 months wasn't halfway through. It was just getting started. Survival wasn't a countdown. It was a vote of confidence. He called this the Lindy Effect, for non-perishable things, ideas, books, technologies, traditions. Their future life expectancy is proportional to how long they've already lasted. In plain English, old shit lasts. Not because it's fancy, not because it's vintage, but because it's already survived. Time is the ultimate stress test. It filters out fads, flukes, and fragile nonsense. What's left? The stuff that works across centuries, cultures, and chaos. Take the Odyssey. Written 2,800 years ago, still taught, adapted, quoted, and referenced. Meanwhile, that best-selling thriller from 2018, forgotten. Not because Homer was a better writer, though, let's be real, he kinda was, but because his story passed generational QA. Every era could have dropped it. They didn't. That's signal. Now compare that to NFT profile pictures. Hyped to the moon in 2021, by 2023, digital landfill. The Lindy Effect called it. If it hasn't proven itself over decades, it's probably noise. This is why architecture reveals truth. The pyramids of Giza have outlived empires, languages, and entire religions. Your office building from 1997, already leaking, cracking, and scheduled for demolition. Why? Because the pyramids were built by people who knew they were building for eternity. They used simple, durable, repairable materials. No plastic sheathing. No disruptive drywall. Just stone, math, and respect for physics. The Lindy Effect isn't nostalgia. It's anti-neomania, the obsession with new just because it's new. Your phone gets a revolutionary update every 6 months. But your cast iron skillet, same design since the 1800s, works on open fire, induction, or a volcano. Never needs a software patch. Just don't wash it with soap, you monster. Even skills follow Lindy. Reading, writing, basic arithmetic, gardening. These aren't obsolete. They're foundational. Meanwhile, mastering TikTok SEO might be lucrative today, but will it matter in 2035? Probably not. Will knowing how to grow food? Absolutely. So when you're choosing what to learn, what to build, or what to believe, ask, has this survived long enough to prove it's not bullshit? Not everything old is good. Bloodletting lasted 2,000 years and was still wrong, but the filter of time increases the odds dramatically. And here's the kicker. You can apply Lindy to your own habits. Journaling, practiced by Marcus Aurelius, Leonardo da Vinci, and modern CEOs. Walking daily, endorsed by Nietzsche, Darwin, and every longevity scientist alive. Reading physical books, survived the printing press, the internet, and Kindle. These aren't trends. They're time-tested tools. So stop chasing the shiny. Start trusting the stubborn, because the future belongs to what refuses to die. Chapter 15, Compound Knowledge. Let's talk about rice. Not the kind you burn because you forgot to turn off the stove. I mean the rice on a chessboard. Legend says an ancient Indian king was so pleased with the invention of chess that he offered its creator any reward. The inventor, humble or diabolically clever, asked for this. 1 grain of rice on the first square, 2 on the second, 4 on the third. Keep doubling until the 64th. The king laughed. Such modesty. He ordered the rice brought forth. By square 10, you've got a bowl. By square 20, a wheelbarrow. By square 30, a warehouse. By square 64, more rice than has ever existed in human history. Like trillions of tons. The king went bankrupt before square 50. That's exponential growth, and it's the secret engine behind compound knowledge. You don't become smart in a flash. You become smart by learning just a little more than you knew yesterday and letting that snowball roll downhill for years. Warren Buffett puts it brutally. Read 500 pages a day. That's how knowledge works. It builds up like compound interest. He's not bragging. He's stating physics. His net worth? Over 99% of it was earned after age 50. Not because he got smarter overnight, but because his knowledge, judgment, and network had decades to compound. Now look at your own life. You skip reading tonight. Just one night. No big deal. But do that 300 nights a year? In 5 years, you've forgone 1,000 hours of learning, enough to master a language, build a business, or rewire your brain. Meanwhile, someone else reads 20 minutes a day. They don't feel ahead. In fact, for years they feel stupid, slow, and overwhelmed. That's the deceptive flat line of compounding. Nothing seems to happen until everything does. It's like charging a capacitor. You pump in electrons, and the voltage stays near zero until snap, it discharges with massive power. Learning is the same. Most people quit right before the breakthrough. And the gap isn't about talent. It's about consistency under invisibility. 2 coders start on the same day. One builds one small project a week. The other waits for the perfect idea. In 2 years, the first has 100 shipped projects, portfolio, and job offers. The second has a Notion doc titled Genius Startup Ideas, Do Not Delete. One publishes every Thursday, rain or shine. The other only writes when inspired. Guess who gets a book deal? Compounding rewards the boring, unsexy habit of showing up, even when no one's watching, even when you feel like a fraud, even when progress is invisible. And it works in reverse, too. Watch 1 extra hour of TV a day? In a year, that's 365 hours, 15 full days, down the drain. Eat slightly worse, move slightly less, sleep slightly later. No single day ruins you. But over a decade, you've engineered your own decline. So, stop asking, how do I get smart fast? Ask, what tiny act of learning can I repeat so consistently that, in 5 years, I'll look back and say, holy shit, I didn't even notice it happening. Because intelligence isn't a lightning strike. It's a drip. And drips, over time, carve canyons. Chapter 6. Antifragility. All right, let's talk about bones. Not yours, unless you've recently jumped off a roof, in which case, stop doing that. I mean the principle of bone. In 1892, a German anatomist named Julius Wolff noticed something weird. Bones get stronger when you stress them. Not just heal, adapt. The more load you put on a femur, the denser it becomes. Take that load away, say, by strapping an astronaut to a zero-gravity couch for 6 months, and their bones start crumbling like stale crackers. This is Wolff's law, and it's a metaphor for how real strength works. Most people think the goal is resilience, bounce back after a hit, but bouncing back is just damage control. Antifragility, a term coined by Nassim Taleb, goes further. You get stronger because of the hit. Think of the Hydra from Greek myth. Chop off 1 head, 2 grow back, stronger, angrier. You don't just survive the attack, you evolve from it. Now look at modern life. We built a world that protects us from stress, and in doing so, made us fragile. Kids aren't allowed to climb trees, fall off bikes, or argue over who gets the last cookie, so they grow up with brittle, emotional skeletons. We sanitize every surface, avoid all germs, and pop antibiotics at the first sniffle, so our immune systems turn on pollen, peanuts, and our own cells. We outsource all our memory to phones, so when the battery dies, we can't even remember our mum's number. This isn't safety, it's atrophy by design. Antifragility says, stop avoiding stress. Invite the right kind. Muscles don't grow from rest. They grow from micro tears during lifting, followed by repair. Startups don't get smart from smooth sailing. They get smart from failed launches, angry customers, and near bankruptcies that force ruthless prioritization. Relationships don't deepen from constant harmony. They deepen from navigating conflict. Well, which builds trust you can't fake. Even ideas are antifragile. The Stoics wanted to be challenged. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He didn't pray for calm seas. He trained in storms. Compare that to today's safe spaces and content warnings, not just for trauma survivors, but for ideas that might make you uncomfortable. That's not compassion. That's building a porcelain mind. Beautiful, but shatters if dropped. The anti-fragile mind seeks disconfirmation. It asks, what would prove me wrong? The anti-fragile business wants competition. It's free R&D. The anti-fragile investor celebrates market crashes. They're buying opportunities. So stop asking, how can I avoid failure? Ask, how can I make failure useful? Design your life so that small shocks make you stronger, not weaker. Lift heavy things. Have hard conversations. Ship imperfect work. Get rejected. Lose a little money. Feel awkward. Because comfort is fragility in disguise, and the world doesn't reward the unbreakable. It rewards the ones who grow teeth when you cut their heads off. Chapter 17. Commitment Devices. Ulysses, contracts. Not the kind on cop cars, though those will also ruin your life if you ignore them, but the mythological kind, half woman, half bird monsters, who sang so beautifully that every sailor who heard them would steer their ship onto the rocks and die in a haze of enchanted earworms. Enter Odysseus. He wanted to hear the song. He was curious, maybe even a little arrogant, but he also really didn't want to die. So he came up with a plan. He ordered his crew to tie him to the mast and plug their own ears with beeswax. Then he gave strict instructions. No matter how much I beg, scream, or promise you treasure, do not untie me. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. You are not one person. You're at least two. There's present you, rational, motivated, watching this video, full of noble intentions. And there's future you, exhausted, distracted, scrolling TikTok at 2 a.m., whispering, just one more episode, I'll start tomorrow. But future you is a liar, a charming, well-meaning liar, but a liar nonetheless. So you have to outsmart yourself. Victor Hugo, facing a brutal deadline for The Hunchback of Notre Dame, locked away all his clothes. Not his drafts, his clothes, so he couldn't leave the house. Naked ambition, literally. He finished the novel 2 weeks early. Jerry Seinfeld used the don't break the chain method. Mark an X on a calendar for every day he wrote new material. The goal wasn't to write a masterpiece. It was to not break the chain. The visual streak became more powerful than motivation. You can do this too. Want to stop doom scrolling? Delete the app now. Don't wait for willpower at midnight. Want to save money? Set up an automatic transfer the second your paycheck hits. Future. You never seize the cash, so they can't spend it. Want to eat healthier? Don't buy junk food at the store. Because no matter how virtuous you feel at 3 p.m., by 9 p.m., you'll be elbow deep in a family-sized bag of just one handful cheese puffs. This isn't about discipline. It's about design. You're not trying to win a fight against your impulses. You're removing the battlefield. Ray! The smartest people don't rely on motivation. They build guardrails. They know their future self will be weak, tired, or emotionally compromised, and they plan for that, not against it. So ask, what do I keep failing at? Not because I don't care, but because I trust future me too much. Then, like Odysseus, tie yourself to the mast, plug your ears, lock the door, break the chain before it breaks you. Because being smart isn't about having perfect self-control. It's about admitting you won't and building a system that works anyway. Chapter 18, the Pareto Principle. 87-7-7. Not the sad, mushy kind your school cafeteria served with mystery meat. I mean Goffredo Pareto's peas, the 19th century Italian economist who noticed something weird in his garden. 20% of his pea pods contained 80% of the peas. He got curious. Checked his data on land ownership in Italy. Yep, 20% of people owned 80% of the land. Looked at global wealth patterns, same ratio. Later, engineers at Microsoft found that fixing 20% of the most common software bugs eliminated 80% of system crashes. This isn't coincidence. It's the Pareto principle. In most systems, a small subset of inputs drives the vast majority of output. And yet here you are, spending 80% of your time on the 20% of tasks that barely move the needle. You reorganize your desktop icons for the 5th time this week. You reply to every email the second it pings. You attend alignment meetings that could have been a 3-sentence Slack thread. Meanwhile, the one client who brings in half your revenue, you haven't called them in months. The one YouTube thumbnail template that consistently converts. You keep experimenting with new ones just in case. The one habit that actually keeps you sane, walking, journaling, cooking real food, you skip because you're too busy. That's performative busyness, the art of looking overwhelmed while achieving nothing that matters. The Pareto principle isn't just about efficiency. It's about ruthless prioritization, because effort, impact. And in a world drowning in inputs, your superpower is saying, this is the 20%. Everything else is noise. Look at Warren Buffett's 20-slot rule. Imagine you only get 20 investment decisions in your entire life. Would you waste one on a crypto meme coin or a sure thing from your cousin's friend? Probably not. You'd wait, research, choose carefully. Now apply that to your time. You get 4,000 weeks in a lifetime. That's it. Every meeting, scroll, chore, and conversation is a slot. Are you spending them on the vital few or the trivial many? Even your problems follow 82T. 80% of your stress comes from 20% of your relationships. 80% of your clutter comes from 20% of your shopping habits. 80% of your creative block comes from 20% of your self-doubt loops. So, flip the script. Instead of asking, what more can I do? What can I stop doing that's eating 80% of my energy for 20% of the return? Audit your life like a forensic accountant. What 20% of your work generates the most value? Double down. What 20% of your friends energize you? See them more. What 20% of your content gets 80% of the views? Make more like that. And ignore the guilt, the shoulds, the fear of missing out, because focusing isn't selfish. It's strategic. The universe doesn't reward effort. It rewards leverage. And leverage lives in the 20%. Chapter 19. Intellectual Humility. The Dunning-Kruger Effect. Meet MacArthur Wheeler. Pittsburgh. This guy decided to rob 2 banks in broad daylight without a mask. Why? Because he'd heard that lemon juice could make you invisible to cameras. Not metaphorically, literally. He smeared it all over his face, stuck his head in front of the security cameras like a confused lemon meringue pie, and walked out with $5,000. He was arrested that same night because, shockingly, lemon juice does not disable closed-circuit television. When shown the footage, he reportedly said, "But I was invisible." This is the Dunning-Kruger effect in its purest, juiciest form. The less competent you are, and the more competent you become, the more you realize how much you don't know. David Dunning and Justin Kruger proved this in a series of brutal experiments. Incompetent participants didn't just score poorly on logic, grammar, and humor tests. They were incapable of recognizing their own failure. Their lack of skill robbed them of the very tools needed to evaluate themselves. It's like trying to proofread a book in a language you don't speak. You can't spot the errors because you don't know what correct looks like. Now flip it. Experts are plagued by doubt. They see nuance, edge cases, hidden variables. That's why real scientists say, the data suggests, while influencers scream, science proves it. Even Socrates, the OG philosopher, famously declared, "I am the wisest man alive, for I know one thing." That's intellectual humility, the awareness that your knowledge is incomplete, contextual, and possibly wrong. The danger isn't ignorance. Ignorance can be fixed. The danger is confident ignorance, the kind that votes, leads companies, posts hot takes, and robs banks with citrus on its face. You've seen it. The guy who's watched 3 YouTube videos on economics and now exposes the Fed like he's Neo in the Matrix. The manager who's never coded, but insists the dev team just needs to work faster. The friend who says, "I don't believe in climate change, it's cold today." This isn't stupidity. It's meta-cognitive failure, a broken feedback loop between action and self-assessment. So, how do you escape man stupid? First, seek disconfirmation, not validation. Ask, what evidence would prove me wrong? If you can't name any, you're not thinking, you're preaching. Second, track your predictions. Write down your bets. This project will launch by June. She'll say yes. And review them later. You'll be shocked how often you were confidently wrong. Third, embrace the valley of despair. That's the stage right after you learn enough to realize how much you don't know. It's uncomfortable. It's where imposter syndrome lives, but it's also where real growth begins. Because smart people aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who expect to be wrong and build systems to catch themselves before they smear lemon juice on their face and rob a bank. Chapter 20. Fundamental Attribution Error. You ever see someone cut in line at the grocery store and instantly think, what a selfish, entitled asshole? But then you cut in line because your kid's screaming, your ice cream's melting, and you just need to pay for this one thing before everything collapses, and you think, I had no choice. It's not like I'm rude. I'm just overwhelmed. That's the fundamental attribution error. We judge others by their character, but ourselves by our circumstances. Your brain has a built-in hypocrisy engine. When someone else fails, it's because they're lazy, dumb, or malicious. When you fail, it's bad luck, external pressure, or a one-time glitch in an otherwise flawless system. This isn't just unfair, it's strategically stupid, because it blinds you to context, which is where real understanding lives. Take Jack Gleason. You know him as Joffrey Baratheon, the sadistic, wine-sipping brat from Game of Thrones. After the show blew up, Gleason got death threats. People sent him hate mail, screamed at him in the street. One fan allegedly told him, "I hope your real life is as miserable as Joffrey's." But here's the thing. He's actually a quiet philosophy student who retired from acting at 21 to avoid fame. But the audience couldn't separate the role from the person. They attributed his character's evil to his soul. Now flip it to your workplace. Co-worker misses a deadline? They're unreliable. You miss a deadline? My dog ate my laptop, my ISP died, and my coffee machine exploded. This error poisons teams, relationships, and even democracies. Politicians aren't corrupt because they're inherently evil. They're responding to incentives, lobbyists, party pressure, and 24/7 news cycles. That doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it explains it. An explanation is the first step to change. Psychologists tested this with a brutal experiment. Participants read essays either for or against Fidel Castro. Some were told the writers had been assigned their position. Others thought they chose it freely. Even when told it was random, people still assumed the pro-Castro writers believed it. Your brain wants to believe actions. It's simpler, it's faster, but it's wrong. So how do you hack this bias? Assume context first. When someone acts weirdly, ask, what pressures are they under? What information do they have that I don't? What would I do if I'd lived their last 48 hours? This isn't naive optimism. It's operational empathy, a cognitive tool, not a moral plea. Because if you understand why someone's acting a certain way, you can predict them, influence them, or avoid them effectively. And here's the bonus. It frees you from outrage. You stop wasting energy hating the lazy driver who's actually rushing to the hospital. You stop writing off a flaky friend who's quietly battling anxiety. You stop assuming your boss is a micromanager. Maybe they just got chewed out by their boss last week. The world isn't full of villains. It's full of people reacting to invisible storms. So, before you label someone, ask, what story am I missing? Because the smartest judgment isn't the harshest one. It's the one with the most context. Chapter 21. Sunk Cost Fallacy. You ever sit through a terrible movie just because you paid for the ticket? You're 45 minutes in. The acting's wooden, the plot's a dumpster fire, and the villain's motivation is he likes clouds. But you stay. Why? I already spent 18 and an hour. I can't just leave. Congratulations. You've been hijacked by the sunk cost fallacy. The belief that past investments, time, money, emotion should dictate future decisions. Spoiler, they shouldn't, because sunk costs are gone. Dead. Buried. They have zero power over the future. Continuing to suffer just to honor them is like throwing good money after bad while screaming, "But I already lost some." The Concorde, the supersonic jet, was a technological marvel and a financial black hole. By the 1970s, both the British and French governments knew it would never turn a profit, but they kept pouring billions into it because they'd already spent billions. They couldn't admit failure, so they doubled down on disaster. That's not logic. That's ego with a spreadsheet. Now look at your life. You stay in a dead-end job because I've been here 5 years. You finish a relationship that's toxic because we've been together since college. You keep building a feature no one uses because we've already coded 10,000 lines. Each one is a double payment. You paid once to get in, and now you're paying again to stay. Games understand this intuitively. In an RPG, you find a legendary sword of mild inconvenience early on. It's heavy, slow, and gives you +1 to awkwardness. Later, you find a better weapon, but you hesitate. But I spent hours grinding for this. Then you remember. Inventory weight is friction. Drop the sword. Run faster. Win easier. That's the move. The British cycling team nailed this under Dave Brailsford. They didn't cling to how it's always been done. If a pillow didn't improve sleep quality, gone. If a hand-washing protocol didn't reduce illness, scrapped. No nostalgia. No guilt. Just, does this help us win right now? So ask yourself, what am I tolerating only because I've already invested in it? If I was starting fresh today, would I choose this path? Am I staying out of loyalty or laziness? Because quitting isn't failure. Quitting the wrong thing is strategy. The smartest people aren't the most persistent. They're the most ruthlessly selective about what they persist in. So go ahead, walk out of the bad movie. You'll get your time back. And maybe your dignity too. Chapter 22. Signal versus noise. You ever listen to financial news? One pundit screams, "The market is crashing, sell everything." Another purrs, "This is the buying opportunity of a generation." Both use jargon that sounds like a robot having a stroke. And both are wrong more than half the time. Why? Because they're drowning in noise, pretending it's signal. Enter Nate Silver, the statistician who correctly predicted the outcome of the 2008 and 2012 US elections in all 50 states. His secret? He doesn't listen to hot takes. He filters. Aggressively. In his book, The Signal and the Noise, he explains, data is useless without context. Information is not insight. The modern world doesn't suffer from a lack of data. It suffers from a surplus of distraction. Your brain isn't built for this. It evolved to notice rustling in the bushes because that could mean tiger, lunch, or sexy rival. But now, the bushes are Twitter, Slack, email, 24/7 news, and your smart fridge judging your snack choices. Every ping is a false alarm. Signal is what helps you act. Noise is everything else. Sherlock Holmes understood this. In A Study in Scarlet, Dr. Watson is shocked that Holmes doesn't know the Earth orbits the Sun. Holmes replies, What the deuce is it to me? You say that we go round the sun. If we went round the moon, it would not make a pennyworth of difference to me or my work. He was curating his brain attic. He refused to store facts that didn't serve his craft, because memory is finite. Attention is the scarce resource. Now look at you. You check your portfolio daily, even though you're investing for retirement in 30 years. Every dip feels like a crisis. Every rally feels like validation. But short-term market movements are random walks, not prophecies. The noise drowns out the signal. Compound growth over decades. You refresh your YouTube analytics every hour after uploading. One video dips. My channel is dying. Another spikes. I've cracked the algorithm. Nope. You're seeing variance, not truth. The signal is your long-term trend, what works across 50 videos, not one. Even your relationships suffer. You dissect a text that says, K. Is it passive aggression? A typo? Are they mad? Bored? Abducting aliens? You spiral. All because you're treating one data point as if it's the whole story. The antidote? Build filters. Ask, does this information change my next action? If not, discard it. Is this a leading indicator, e.g. customer churn, or a lagging echo, e.g. yesterday's stock close? Am I consuming this to learn or to feel like I'm in the know? Warren Buffett doesn't watch financial TV. Charlie Munger reads obituaries to learn how not to live. Naval Ravikant says, the less news you consume, the closer you are to reality. Signal creates agency. So mute the chatter. Turn off the alerts. Ignore the breaking that breaks nothing. The truth isn't loud. It's quiet. And it's waiting for you to stop scrolling long enough to hear it. Chapter 23. Goodhart's Law. Imagine you're the manager of a Soviet nail factory in 1972. Moscow sends down a quota, produce 10,000 nails this month. So your workers crank out 10,000 tiny, useless tacks, barely bigger than pins. Technically, they hit the target, but nobody can hang a picture with them. So, next month, the Kremlin changes the metric. Okay, fine, produce 10 tons of nails. Now your workers cast one giant, absurd nail, 30 feet long, 8 tons heavy, sits in the yard like a failed sculpture from a communist art biennale. Again, the quota's met. Again, it's useless. This is Goodhart's law. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. The moment you attach incentives to a metric, people stop optimizing for the real goal and start optimizing for the number. Because numbers are easier to game than purpose. Now look at standardized testing in American schools. The goal? Educate kids. The metric? Test scores. So what happens? Teachers teach to the test. Kids memorize formulas they'll never use. Creativity, critical thinking, and curiosity get shoved into a locker labeled non-essential. You don't get better education, you get better test prep. It's not malice. It's incentive alignment. People do what they're rewarded for, not what you intend them to do. Even corporate KPIs fall into this trap. Increased customer support tickets resolved. Agents rush calls, leave problems half-fixed. Grow social media followers. Buy bots, post clickbait, alienate real fans. Maximize quarterly profits. Cut R&D, delay maintenance, destroy long-term value. The metric becomes the mission, and the mission dies. This is why YouTube's algorithm is a cautionary tale. Creators are told, optimize for watch time. So they stretch intros, add fake urgency, smash that like button, or the algorithm kills your channel. The signal, valuable content, drowns in the noise of metric chasing. But here's the fix. Never confuse the proxy for the thing itself. Ask, what is this metric supposed to represent? How could someone succeed on the metric while failing at the real goal? Can I measure the outcome? not just the output. Google famously avoided this early on by refusing to sell banner ads because clicks could be gamed. Instead, they tied ads to actual purchases via Google Shopping or relevance. They measured value, not volume. So audit your own life. Are you tracking hours worked instead of impact made? Chasing likes instead of meaningful connection? Celebrating finished tasks instead of problems solved? Because a metric is a flashlight, not the territory. Shine it where it helps, but never let it blind you to the real work. Otherwise, you'll end up with a warehouse full of giant nails and no way to hang your diploma. Chapter 24. Surfing. Trends and momentum. Let's talk about pickaxes. Not because I'm about to start mining cryptocurrency, though if you are, Godspeed. But because the smartest people in a gold rush don't dig for gold. They sell shovels. Enter Sam Brannan, California, 1848. Gold is discovered at Sutter's Mill. Within months, 300,000 desperate dreamers flood into San Francisco, staking claims, panning rivers and eating beans out of a can they dug with their bare hands. Brannan? He didn't touch a single rock. He opened a general store and jacked up the price of pickaxes by 1,200%. He became California's first millionaire by riding the wave. That's surfing. Aligning yourself with existing momentum instead of paddling upstream like a caffeinated salmon. Now look at Bill Gates. In 1980, IBM needed an operating system for its new personal computer fast. They approached Digital Research, the market leader. But Digital's CEO was slow, arrogant, and missed the call. Literally, he was out flying his private plane. Gates, then a nobody running a tiny software shop, saw the wave. He didn't have an OS, so he bought one. QDOS, Quick and Dirty Operating System, for $50,000, tweaked it, renamed it MS-DOS, and licensed it to IBM instead of selling it outright. Why? Because selling would give him a lump sum. Licensing meant he got paid every time IBM sold a PC. And when clones flooded the market, Microsoft licensed to them too. He didn't invent the PC. He didn't build the hardware. He just positioned himself where the commoditization tsunami was headed and let it carry him to the moon. This is the difference between effort and leverage. Hard work gets you up the hill. Surfing puts you on a wave that's already moving. Most people confuse hustle with strategy. They grind 80-hour weeks on a sinking ship, proud of their blisters, blind to the fact the ocean is receding. The surfer doesn't create the wave. They study it, wait for it, paddle with it, and stand up and let physics do the work. So ask, what massive, irreversible trends are already underway? AI, aging populations, remote work, climate migration. Where is energy, money, or attention already flowing? What can I offer that's complementary to that flow, not in opposition to it? You don't need to predict the future. You just need to notice what's already happening and get in front of it. Aesop said, "No wind favors a ship without a destination." So pick your wave, trim your board, and stop trying to row against the tide. Because being smart isn't about creating momentum. It's about not missing it when it passes you by. Chapter 25. Cognitive Dissonance. You ever convince yourself that a terrible breakup was actually for the best? You cry for 3 days straight, eat an entire wheel of brie like it's emotional currency, then bam, you're on Instagram saying things like, "I needed to evolve spiritually," or "We were never aligned on core values anyway." You've just performed open heart surgery on your own brain to stop the pain. This is cognitive dissonance, the psychological equivalent of trying to run 2 incompatible apps at once. When your beliefs clash with your actions or reality, you don't change your beliefs. You rewrite reality to make it fit. In 1954, psychologist Leon Festinger went undercover in a doomsday cult led by a woman who claimed aliens would destroy Earth on December 21st. unless the faithful wore purple robes and waited on a mountaintop. Festinger watched as the date passed, and nothing happened. Logically, the cult should have imploded. But no, they doubled down. Their leader announced, "Our faith was so strong, it saved the planet." Because admitting they were wrong would have meant admitting they wasted years, money, and dignity on a cosmic lie. The dissonance was too painful, so they invented a new story where they were heroes, not suckers. That's not delusion. It's self-preservation. Your brain would rather be consistently wrong than painfully confused, and it will deploy absurd mental gymnastics to avoid that discomfort. Enter Aesop's fox. The fox sees a bunch of grapes hanging just out of reach. He jumps and fails. Again. Finally, he walks away muttering, they're probably sour anyway. He doesn't say, "I suck at jumping." Now look at your life. You buy an overpriced gadget, then ignore every flaw. Because I paid $2,000 for this, it has to be amazing. You stay loyal to a failing sports team because I've supported them since I was a kid, even as they trade their star players for hope and a used canoe. You defend a toxic friend because we've been through so much, while quietly resenting them for years. Cognitive dissonance isn't weakness, it's universal. But smart people catch it in real time. How? By practicing pre-mortems. Before you commit, ask, if this goes wrong, what excuse will I invent to avoid blame? And when you're in it, say the magic words, I was wrong. Not, I was right, but the world failed me. Just wrong. Then you're free. Because the smartest move isn't to avoid contradiction, it's to let it rewire you instead of lying to yourself to keep the old software running. Chapter 26. Specific knowledge. The niche. Let's talk about Red Adair. Not a comic book hero, not a myth. A real, oil-stained, chain-smoking Texan who, for decades, was the only person on Earth you called when an oil well exploded into a 300-foot fireball. Governments, corporations, desperate engineers, they'd all say the same thing: get red. He didn't have a degree in combustion physics. He didn't write white papers. He just knew, deep in his bones, how to kill a fire that could melt steel. And because his knowledge was tacit, hard-won, and impossible to systematize, nobody could replace him. He charged millions per job, and he never had to apply for work. That's specific knowledge. The kind you can't be trained for in school, can't be outsourced, and can't be faked. Naval Ravikant puts it bluntly. Specific knowledge is found by pursuing your genuine curiosity and passion. It's not rentable or transferable. Compare that to generic knowledge: how to write a basic email, how to use Excel, how to say synergy with a straight face. That's all valuable, but it's commoditized. Anyone can learn it in a weekend course. And if anyone can do it, you're competing on price, which means you lose. But your weird obsession with 14th century Venetian shipbuilding, your uncanny ability to calm panicked clients with 3 words, your taste for turning spreadsheets into visual poetry, that's your niche. And niches are defensible, because the market doesn't reward well-rounded. It rewards uniquely positioned. You see this in creators, the YouTuber who only explains quantum physics through cooking metaphors, the musician who records songs using only vintage typewriters and squeaky doors, the consultant who fixes SaaS churn by analyzing customer support transcripts like literary texts. They didn't win by being better. They won by being irreplaceable. And the best part? You don't choose your niche. You uncover it. It's where your natural curiosity, your lived experience, and market demand overlap. Think of it like ikigai, the Japanese concept. What you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, what people will pay for. That's your Red Adair zone. Most people try to reverse engineer this. They ask, what's profitable? Then fake interest. But you can't fake specific knowledge. It leaks out in your tone, your patience, your willingness to dive deeper when others quit. So stop trying to be useful. Stop being strangely, obsessively, usefully weird, because the future belongs not to generalists who know a little about everything, but to specialists who know everything about one weird thing and are the only ones who can solve the problem no one else even sees. Chapter 27. The Focusing Illusion. You ever get a tiny scratch on your brand new car and feel like the universe has personally betrayed you? You stare at it for 20 minutes. Zoom in with your phone camera like it's a crime scene. Fantasize about repainting the whole door. You're emotionally devastated, as if your car's entire identity has been reduced to one microscopic flaw. Then, 3 weeks later, you don't even notice it. You're too busy wondering why your coffee tastes like despair and whether your dog judges you. That's the focusing illusion, coined by Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman. Nothing in life is as important as you think it is while you're thinking about it. Your brain has a spotlight, and whatever it shines on feels like the center of reality. But the spotlight is a liar. It inflates the present moment into an eternal crisis or a permanent miracle until it moves on. Kahneman tested this by asking people to predict their happiness if they became paraplegic or won the lottery. Both groups assumed their lives would be permanently transformed, one in misery, the other in bliss. But when he studied actual paraplegics and lottery winners, their day-to-day happiness returned to baseline within months, not because pain or joy disappeared, but because life is multifaceted. You don't spend every second thinking about your legs or your bank account. You think about your weird dream, your lunch, your cat's weird sneeze. The illusion isn't just about big events. It's about micro-obsessions. You replay a cringy text you sent in 2017, like it's still actively ruining lives. You assume this job rejection means you're unemployable forever. You buy a 2,500 standing desk, convinced it'll fix your posture, your focus, and your existential dread, only to use it as a clothes rack by Tuesday. Even social media weaponizes this. One viral video? You think your channel is made? One algorithm dip? You're doomed. Neither is true. You're just trapped in the glare of the current frame. The antidote? Zoom out. Ask, will this matter in 5 weeks? 5 months? 5 years? Am I overestimating how much others are thinking about this? Spoiler, they're not. They're focused on their own scratch. What else is true right now that I'm ignoring? Bruce Lee didn't obsess over one punch. He trained adaptability, because in a real fight, the problem isn't the strike, it's your fixation on it, while the other guy knees you in the groin. So stop letting your brain's spotlight dictate your reality. Turn it off. Step back. See the whole car, not just the scratch. Because the smartest perspective isn't the most intense one. It's the one with the widest aperture. Chapter 28. Systems versus goals. You ever set a New Year's resolution to lose 20 pounds? You crush it for 2 weeks. Meal prep like a Navy SEAL. Hit the gym like your life depends on it. Then, you miss one workout. Eat one slice of pizza. The voice in your head goes, well, fuck it. I blew it. Might as well finish the whole pie. That's not a willpower failure. That's a goal design failure. Enter Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, who failed at everything for years, writing, cartooning, business, until he flipped the script. He stopped chasing goals and started building systems. His rule? Forget goals. Focus on the system that gives you what you want. Because goals are binary. You either achieve them or you don't. Systems are continuous. You succeed every time you follow them. Lose 20 pounds? That's a goal. Eat whole foods and move daily. That's a system. Write a bestseller? Goal. Write 500 words every morning before checking email? System. Get 100,000 subscribers? Goal. Ship one deeply researched, entertaining video every Thursday. System. The British cycling team proved this under Dave Brailsford. Their goal wasn't win Olympic gold. Their system was the aggregation of marginal gains. Paint the team truck white, so dust is visible, leading to cleaner bikes. Use custom pillows to improve sleep. Teach riders the perfect hand-washing technique to reduce illness. Analyze tire friction down to the micron. No single change mattered much, but together, they turned a mediocre team into Olympic and Tour de France champions, because systems compound, goals plateau. And here's the brutal truth. Winning once is luck. Winning repeatedly is architecture. YouTube is full of overnight successes who actually uploaded for 7 years before one video blew up. They didn't quit because they weren't chasing virality. They were committed to the process. The system kept them showing up, even when the results said, abandon hope. So ask, what daily or weekly ritual would move me closer to the life I want, even if I never arrive? Am I measuring outputs, videos posted, pages written, or just outcomes, views, book deals? If I never got external validation, would I still do this? Because a goal says, I'll be happy when. A system says, I'm happy while. And in a chaotic world, you can't control outcomes, but you can own your inputs. So drop the finish line, build the machine, and let the results take care of themselves. Chapter 29, Confirmation Bias. You ever read a horoscope that says, you're feeling uncertain about a major decision, but your intuition is guiding you toward the right path, and you're like, holy shit, that's exactly what I'm going through. Except, that's always what your horoscope says. It's vague, flattering, and emotionally open-ended, designed so you fill in the blanks with your own life. That's the Barnum effect. The tendency to believe generic statements are deeply personal because they confirm what you already feel. But that's just the cute, harmless cousin of a much darker cognitive glitch, confirmation bias. The automatic, unconscious preference for information that confirms what you already believe, and the dismissal of anything that challenges it. In 1960, psychologist Peter Wasson gave people a simple number sequence, 2, 4, 6. Their job? Figure out the rule. Most guessed even numbers increasing by 2. They tested 8, 10, 12. They felt smart, confident, done. But the real rule was any 3 numbers in ascending order. They failed because they only tested examples that confirmed their hypothesis, not ones that could falsify it. They never tried 1, 2, 3, which would have worked, or 5, 3, 1, which would have broken it. They wanted to be right, not to find out. That's how your brain works, all the time. You follow political accounts that scream what you already think and mute anyone who disagrees. You remember every time your lucky socks led to a win, but forget the 10 losses while wearing them. You interpret your partner's silence as emotional distance because you're already insecure, even though they're just tired from work. Confirmation bias isn't just about opinions. It corrupts perception itself. Your eyes see what your beliefs tell them to see. And in the age of algorithmic feeds, it's weaponized. YouTube recommends more videos like the ones you watch. Instagram shows you influencers who mirror your worldview. Before long, your reality is a hall of mirrors, each reflection reinforcing the last. The antidote? Actively seek disconfirmation. Karl Popper, the philosopher of science, said, "A theory is scientific only if it can be proven false." That's the core of the scientific method. Not proving you're right, but trying as hard as you can to prove you're wrong. So build that into your life. Before launching a product, ask, what would make this fail? Then go find customers who tell you. In an argument, say, convince me I'm wrong. When you feel certain, pause and ask, what evidence am I ignoring because it's inconvenient? Because being smart isn't about collecting proof you're brilliant. It's about letting reality edit your story, even when the red pen bleeds. Chapter 30. Conclusion. No! The easy part. 2 hours, 30 mental models, and approximately 21,000 words later. You didn't learn how to become smart. You learned how to stop being stupid. And that's the whole point, because being smart isn't about memorizing facts, flexing your IQ, or dropping Nietzsche quotes at brunch. It's about removing friction from your thinking, just like Ignaz Semmelweis removing germs by washing his hands, or Michelangelo removing marble to reveal David. It's easy once you realize intelligence is mostly subtraction. Subtract the noise, subtract the ego, subtract the need to be right, subtract the stories you tell yourself to avoid discomfort. What's left? Clarity, action, agency. You now have a toolkit, not for impressing people, but for navigating reality without getting wrecked by your own brain. When you feel rage on the road, Hanlon's razor. When you're tempted to double down on a sunk cost, OODA Loop, just pivot. When your coworker seems like a villain, fundamental attribution error. Give them context. When you're paralyzed by choice, Pareto. To the 20% that moves 80%. You don't need to master all 30. Hell, you don't even need to remember them all. Just pick one, the one that made you go, oh, shit, and use it today. Maybe it's inversion. Instead of asking how to succeed, ask how you could guarantee failure, then avoid those things like landmines. Maybe it's commitment devices. Lock your future self into the right behavior now, while you're still rational. Maybe it's steel manning before you argue. Restate the other side so well they say, yeah, that's exactly it. That's the easy part. Not effortless. Not lazy, but low friction, because you're working with human nature, not against it. And if you take nothing else away, remember this: smart people aren't born. They're built brick by brick, mistake by mistake, model by model.